Hi and welcome. My name is Habibullah Husseini. I'll be taking you through how to resolve the issue of PostgreSQL fatal error, so username does not exist. So I'm currently teaching some few kids on SQL, and we decided to use Postgres database management as the application to be using throughout our course. So many of my students have been facing this issue that the user or the Postgres SQL does not exist. So the first thing which I'm gonna do is I'm gonna re-download Postgres SQL on my computer. So I'm just gonna dive directly to the Postgres SQL download. And what I always do is I'm not a big fan of installing things on my computer. So I always go rather for the zip archive. So let's see. I'm not too sure what's wrong with my internet. Sometimes Blink is kind of. Uh, Let me try accessing from Google. And here we are. So, uh, what I will first do is, so we want the Windows package, right? So once you are on the Windows, so once you are on the link, you want to go on the download here on the menu, and you want to select your operating system you are associated with. So I'm currently on Windows, so I'm going to click Windows here. Then I'm going to go to advanced users can download a zip archive, which I always like to use. So I'm going to click here, and it's gonna bring me all these versions of PostgreSQL. So we have the latest version, which is currently 14.3 at the time of this video. So I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna be using 9.6.24, okay, and I'm gonna download the 64-bit here. Okay, so I'm gonna just wait a couple of minutes and it should be done. By the way, it has a great documentation for any of you guys that are interested in diving much deeper. The documentation of PostgreSQL it's very much into detail. Okay, so you can even download the PDF format or the A4 and so on, or the online version. It's really up to you. Now I'm gonna go to the download, to my download folder here or directory, and I'm gonna look for here PostgreSQL 9.6.24. I'm gonna unzip it. I'm gonna extract it here. It seems like a current version already exists. Okay, so I'm just gonna overwrite over all the current directory, and once it's done, I'm gonna copy it from the download folder here and just take it to where I'm more comfortable with having all my work folders. So you can see I have my Java here. I'm using Amazon Corretto 8, which is basically Java 8, but the open version, distributed by Amazon. I'm using Android Studio. So all these have zip files which I've downloaded and just extracted in my D drive here. So once it's done, I'm gonna dive into uh, is it done yet? Oh, okay, no. So not yet. So we're just gonna wait for a couple of minutes. Huh. So let's see. Hmm. So as I was saying, I'm basically using zip files here instead of always having to install things on my computer. Okay, so it seems like it's done. So I'm gonna just go into the folder here, and we have the pgadmin4 here. We have the bin directory. Now, if this is your first time installing PostgreSQL into your computer, the first thing you need to do is really to initialize a directory where PostgreSQL is going to be saving uh, all your data. Okay, so by the way, all this information, guys, doesn't just come off right the hook. Okay, it's all given in the documentation, as I said. So uh, this is it here. I'm gonna go to Google again and just type initdb Postgres, and you can see that the first resource you have it's really from the postgresql.org documentation. So when I click it, it's gonna just take me, it's telling you that initdb creates a new PostgreSQL database cluster. Okay, a database cluster is a collection of databases that are managed by a single server instance. So basically, it's going to be the directory where all the data which you're going to be working on and so on are going to be stored. Okay, and it tells you that this is one of the first things that you need to do. Okay, so this is the command here using your command prompt here. Okay, and it takes in an option and it takes in a folder. Okay, a directory where you want to initialize. Okay, so right, let me try this resource again and see what we have here. Yeah, so here it gives you like a proper example. So to initialize a database cluster manually, run initdb and specify the desired file system location of the database cluster with the D option. Okay, so this is basically what you need to just copy and paste. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come back here to my PostgreSQL folder and I'm gonna create a little folder here. I'm gonna name it data. Okay, so I'm using basically the information they've given me here. So I am in my pgsql, which you can see here, pgsql, so slash data. So this is the folder where I want all the data to be initialized. Now, before diving deeper, I'm gonna come back to my file explorer. I'm gonna show you some few files that PostgreSQL creates or runs for the first time when you launch it. Actually, I'm gonna wait on that for a bit. Okay, so I'm just gonna hmm, I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna do a shift right click on my Windows, a shift right click on the mouse, and I'm gonna click open PowerShell command. By the way, feel free, you can use PowerShell or you can use the CMD. Okay, if you are using the command prompt and you want to go from one drive to another, trying to do something like this, I'm currently using the D drive, so trying to do something like this will never work. So what you want to do is you want to use the CD change directory and go down to the roots of your C drive and you want to dive into Windows. Sorry, you want to dive into your Windows directory. Then from there, you want to do a D and you want to do this semicolon here. Is that okay? Then I'm currently in my D drive. So that's using the command prompt as compared to the PowerShell. Okay? So now once I am in my um, PostgreSQL folder, I'm gonna dive into the bin directory. Okay, so you can see it here. This is the bin directory, and this is all the files it's got into. So I'm more interested with this. This is what I'm interested in currently. Okay, so I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna copy this here. Okay. Okay, so this is it here. I'm gonna copy just this here in it, baby. So this is the PowerShell. Okay, so I'm just gonna erase everything. I'm gonna do something like this. Okay, I'm gonna do a double quote here. Then I'm gonna go back here and I'm gonna go into my data. I'm gonna copy this file path here and I'm just gonna paste it right here. Now, once I'm done, I'm gonna click enter. Oh yeah, I forgot something. I've got to just launch it. It's an executable, so something like this makes sense. Yeah, so go ahead. So we're gonna wait and see just what it says. Okay, so you can see that it says the files belonging to this database system will be owned by user Habib, which is the username, which is the user of this current computer. So this user must also own the server process here. So it says that the database cluster will be initialized with local English, etc. It tells you the encoding is using the Windows encoding, that it's using the default text search configuration will be set to English, and you can take time and read everything, the time zone, anything that's needed for basically a database to be set up. So if you had to go back into this data folder that we created, you should see something similar to this. Okay, so this is what you should have currently. So these files have just currently been initialized. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is basically we need to have access to the database, right? Now, if you try going to the database itself here, which is pgadmin, which is the interface, basically not the database, it's just the interface. So I'm just gonna launch it. Let's wait a couple of minutes. I wouldn't say minutes, I think it takes about some few seconds because I'm currently on a high performing Alienware computer. Right, so it's asking me for a password. Okay, so you can type whichever password. I'm gonna just try Postgres. Oh, it's opening. Okay, so I'm gonna try to create a server here. Okay, so I'm gonna name it Postgres. I'm gonna go to connection here. It's just a local host. Okay, and the username is Postgres. I'm gonna give it a password admin. I think that should be fine. I'm gonna try to save. Now it's giving, which is very much obvious, it's giving this error here that it's unable basically to connect to the server. That's because the server was never started in the first place. Okay, so this is not the right approach. You don't want to directly dive into the interface or the IDE that's been given to you by PostgreSQL. Okay, so I'm gonna close that. By the way, whenever you open a new admin interface, it also creates a session. Okay, so you can have a better view at this session when you go to your C drive. You go to users, you go to your uh, uh, you go to the access directory of your computer, so which is usually the name that you gave to that computer. So here it's Habib, and I'm gonna go to app data, I'm gonna go to roamings, and I'm gonna go to pgadmin. So you can see this is the session that is created each time you do start this GUI here, this user interface. Okay, it creates this session. So there are times where you will try to start the interface and it's going to give you some few issues like it can't start the user interface for so and so on reason. What you want to do is come back here to this session here and just remove it, delete it, and try to relaunch the user interface again, and it should work. Okay, and I'm going to show you one last thing here. When I go to local, when I go to local here, you're gonna, when you scroll down, you will see two pgadmin here. You have one here that basically contains all the log files that's been created so far, and you have one pgadmin folder contains any user data, the local state, so the log files. I think you're gonna meet this issue a lot of the time where it's gonna say that there is a lock on the server. When you're trying to start multiple instances of the same server, it's gonna say there's already a lock, so you're gonna come here to try to resolve that issue and so on. Now, aside, I'm just gonna close the user interface. Now, what we need to do is actually have access to our database. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is basically start the database process, okay, since we've already initialized it. And to start it, once more, I'm gonna go for the resource that's been given to me. I'm gonna reclose all these things here. So I'm gonna say start Postgres server command. Okay, so starting the database here. Good. So to start the database, according to the information we have here, this is the command you would need to use. Okay. So it says normally it's better to start Postgres in the background. For this, you're gonna use if you're on the Unix machine and so on. So this shell syntax can get tedious quickly. So what the command we'll be using instead of this, I will be using this command here. Okay, so pgctl start followed by uh, the D option to be able to access our data. Okay, so I'm gonna just copy this here. Okay, so I'm just gonna say pg. I'm gonna look for it. Okay, so here it is. I'm gonna write start. I'm gonna use the D command and I'm gonna copy this here. I'm gonna just I'm gonna repaste it here, close the quotes, and I'm gonna click press enter. And let's see what it says. So it says that the server is starting. It says logs. So these are the basically logs. Multi-exact member wraparound and some database system is ready to accept connection. Auto vacuum launcher started and so on. So you can see that our database basically has started, and this maintains a log whenever to whatever transaction is occurring in our database. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use this time my um, command prompt, okay, instead of the PowerShell to basically access the database. So I'm just gonna go into my SQL, my Postgres SQL here. I'm gonna go into the bin. I'm gonna drive into the bin directory, and what you wanna do, what most of my students have been doing is they were trying to create a user directly, so using something like this. So you know, and this was the issue basically you keep on getting. So they are basically trying off the hook to access a user, the Postgres user, which is supposed to be the root user. Okay, and this is the response that's giving psql fatal. Okay, it's saying that the role Postgres does not exist, which basically makes sense. Okay, it does not exist just as of now. It's still not created. As I said, this is a database when you are using. So uh, for people that are using the binaries of uh, Postgres, or those using the zip archive such as me, you would need to redo everything from scratch. It's not like the complete installation, the executable which does everything for you automatically. Okay, so this is a bit more manual. Okay, now it also has it has more of the advantage than having everything installed by you, in an executable. Okay, you do get much more control, as you can see, as we've been doing. You get much more control to whenever you want to start, stop, or create this or access certain aspect of the database. Okay, so we're having this issue whenever we try. I mean, you can try 100 times, and you can see the log here. It's just keeping the log saying that the Postgres does not exist. So I'm gonna come back here one more time here, and I'm gonna go to my Google again. I'm gonna look for resources on how to create this user. Okay, so I'm gonna go for creating a super user. Okay, so let's say creating super user uh, Postgres. Let's see if we have, or we have something in the documentation. So create user. Right. So we can create a user, and this is what we have here. So let's just look at it here. So we have the create user here. We have create user, and it takes in an option. Okay. It has super user. This is what we need. So this is what we need. We need both of this command. We need the create user command here, and we need this option here, super user here. Okay, this is just what we'll be needing. And in the after having it as a super user, you can create roles and so on. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back here, and since I'm on my command prompt, I'm gonna do a directory here. and it's gonna show me everything that's inside the bin directory, and this is what we are looking for: create user.x. Okay, the executable. So I'm gonna just do a clx, erase everything, and I'm gonna do create user. I'm gonna use the option super user. Okay, and I'm gonna make it Postgres. I'm gonna click OK. Now it's saying that there is a little issue here. It's saying the create dbx illegal option super user. Okay, so let me just try. Maybe I've put it through. Let's use one. Okay, so we're having a little issue here. I wasn't expecting it, but since it came, how about we try to solve the issue together? Now, let's see what we have here. So, right, so we have, these are the option it takes: the create user. Oh, sorry, we're using create db instead of create user. Yeah, it's my mistake. I'm sorry. So it's create user we need. Excellent. So if I did help here, we should see the exactly as we saw in the documentation. So we have the, it was here, it was dash dash. This is what we are interested in here. So we should see something similar to that super user. Excellent. Now, so let's redo that again one more time. So create user, I'm gonna type super user here, and I'm gonna make it Postgres. So that's going to be the user. I'm going to click OK, and it's been created. How do we know it works? Let's retry the previous command that we did this. Okay, when I do, boom, we are in the database now. So our server, it's running. Okay, you can see that the server is actually running. It's just keeping a log of everything. Okay, and here we have been able to currently access our database system, the Postgres database system. If you want to see all the users you currently have, uh, you want to do something like this, and we have this user. So Habib by default, since is the default user of this computer, okay, it's actually not a user that you can access. Okay, so by default, Habib is used as the default user for which the database is being linked into. But the super user which should be used to access the database now is PostgreSQL. Okay, and that should be fine now. Now from there on here, you can now come back here. So I'm gonna come back here now since we already have the. I'm gonna try here, and let's wait and see. I'm just gonna create a new. Good. I'm gonna create a new server. Okay, so basically at this moment we have already solved the issue of the user does not exist and so on. So you can create as much as you want, and you can later come on here, and for the name, I'm gonna make it PostgreSQL here. That's fine. It's gonna be a local host here. Uh, Boom, and there we are. Everything works now. So you can see we successfully were able to create a new server here, and we have the database here. When you come to login, you have the PostgreSQL, the Postgres user we created, and we have by default Habib as the account used to link it to our